Because this set has 0 flaws. Hey guys, this is JP's LEGO Reviews. Today I'm going to review the LEGO Star Wars UCS Ewok Village. Now, it's not really a UCS set, but this set comes with 1,990 pieces. The set number on this set is 10236, and the recommended age rating for this set is 12 and up. So let's break it down. Now we're starting with the minifigures, and we're starting off with the Ewoks / Chewbacca. So from left to right we have Legray, Teebo, Chief Chirper, a generic Ewok warrior, Wicket, and finally Chewbacca. Now, out of these 6 minifigures, the 2 that I prefer the most is Legray and also Teebo. The reason why is they simply just have more detail. But now, let's move on to the back of the minifigures. And also, Chewbacca is the old design where he's not as nearly detailed. Now, from the back, all these minifigures look pretty boring, considering it's a 2013 set and there aren't too many details. I actually like the look of the classic Chewbacca, but the 2 favourite ones I have, and again, it's because they're slightly more detailed, is Legray and Teebo. But those 2 have a different sort of back or head design compared to the rest of the Ewoks. And I really like the colouring of Chief Chirper as well. But now, let's move on to the Empire / Droid minifigures. Now, out of this minifigure selection, out of the entire set, we have 2 Scout Troopers, 2 Stormtroopers, C-3PO, and R2-D2. Now, I believe this is the first year of the new sort of R2-D2 design that evolved from 2012, I believe. And this minifigure looks actually really good compared to the 2012 version of R2-D2. I like the way C-3PO looks, even though he's a bit under-detailed. And I also like the Scout Trooper detailing as well. But the Stormtroopers do look a bit strange in my opinion. But now, let's move on to the back of these minifigures. Now, from the back, the minifigures that I like the most from this angle are really neither. They're all sort of very similar. The Scout Trooper, the Stormtrooper, and C-3PO have an equal amount of detail in the back. Meanwhile, R2-D2 has basically 0 detail in the back, which is a bit disappointing, but yet again, it is a 10-year-old LEGO set at this point, so it does make sense for it to not look as modern as the sets you would find these days. But now, let's look at the alternate facial expressions of these minifigures before we move on to the light side, or the Rebels. Now, with the facial expressions of these 4 minifigures, they're surprisingly not angry clones. Instead, they're all the same sort of smiley face underneath some sort of, I believe, a balaclava, and except with the facial area exposed. And the reason why LEGO did this is so that they could hide the minifigures' sort of facial, skin color really, with the black, but still having the facial expressions of the minifigures. But now, let's move on to the Rebels. Now, here are the Rebel minifigures. From left to right, we have 2 Rebel just soldiers, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Princess Leia. Now, out of these minifigures, I don't really have a favourite. I do like the torso prints of the 2 Rebel Troopers and how they're slightly different, but I do actually appreciate the sort of pant printing that Han Solo does get as well. And I like the fact that Luke Skywalker's hand is black, reminiscing of how his hand was chopped off at the end of episode 5. But now, let's move on to the back of these minifigures. Now, in this picture, you do actually see Princess Leia's secondary facial expression, but out of these 5 minifigures, I don't really favour too many of them just because they're all sort of boring, but the 2 Rebel Troopers have the most interesting back torso printing, so that's definitely a positive. But now, let's look at the alternate facial expressions before we move on to the Ewok Village and its subparts. So, the only minifigures with an alternate facial expression, apart from Princess Leia here, is the Rebel Trooper with the red beard, and Luke Skywalker, where he has a more happier sort of facial expression. But now, let's move on to the separate side builds of the Ewok Village. Here is the speed bike for the Ewok Village, and specifically for the Scout Troopers. Now, simply just add them in between the leg sockets. You attach their arms over here to the sort of thing, and they can, the handle, and they can kind of control it from there. you have a few pieces here and a little bit of detail, but my favorite bit about this is the stand. But now let's move on to the cannon kind of launcher before we move on to the rest of the Ewok village. Now, here is the cannonball launcher. Now, before we actually fire one, these spin here, they do absolutely nothing. You have a bit of plants and a little bit of other detail as well. But you have 6 what you call cannons. You get one of these, you add them into the cannon socket, and then you just flick them. They do pack a bit more of a punch than what you would expect, but they're not like a spring-loaded shooter where they'll actually travel quite a distance. But now, let's move on to the Ewok village itself. Now, here is the Ewok village itself. It looks absolutely fantastic, but before I show you some of the more detailed functions, I'm actually just going to kind of break this in two, and I'm going to show you the 2 different sides of the Ewok village. So, let's break it down. Now, we have actually the isolated trunk of the Ewok village, and I'll quickly spin it around so there's a few different functions I can show you. Firstly, this is the bridge connecting the kind of isolated bit of the Ewok village to the rest of it, and it simply is connected with these bricks, not bricks, but these plates, and then obviously 2 Technic pins, and they can be attached from either side, but they are removable, and I'll just completely remove them from now. Now, there's also a hole here. I'll explain that a bit later. There's also a ladder to get from the floor of Endor to the start of the Ewok village. Now, it's an okayly built ladder, but there's nothing too special. It has a decent amount of motion as well. But inside, or at the back of it, you can actually see that it's a very hollowed out interior. But you're probably asking, what is this, right? So you add a minifigure onto the, I'm just going to hold this so you can see it, the tiled surface. Now, for me to be able to do this properly, I'm going to actually have to turn it around the set, hopefully with Han Solo still intact. Now, what you then do is you pull it out very fast, and it turns into a slide, and that was the sound of Han Solo just hitting the floor. But now, let's move on to the rest of the Ewok village build, or the bigger section of it. And here is the rest of the Ewok village build. I'll quickly give it a spin so that you can see what it all looks like, but then I'll show you the functions and the details of this massive sort of real chunk of Ewok village structure. Now, you're going to see some views like this view, for example, or the back of a triangle, where you wouldn't actually think about the detail too much, but LEGO have actually made this bit look good too, which is a good effort from LEGO, and it makes it look displayable from all angles. But there truly is a lot of detail, and a lot of love obviously went into the Ewok village design, and even though it's not the biggest set ever, it's a very well compacted design. So now, let's move on to the functions and the features of the big portion of the Ewok village. Now, let's look at the details of the Ewok village. And let's start with the center. Now, in the center, there are quite a few sort of smaller, yet still important details to look at. We have drums over here, and drums over here, but these are made out of a scout trooper, stormtrooper, and another type of trooper's head. Over here you have a fire where you can actually roast a minifigure, and this is actually accurate to the movie, because if we get Han Solo, which I'm just got him now, you attach him, and then you can slowly rotate him. Okay, he'll actually hit the fire, but he'll slowly rotate across the fire. Also, the fire spins. Now, I'll just remove Han Solo. Now, also you can place a person or a minifigure on this fiery seat, which is what happens with C-3PO in the movie, where you sort of seat him like this. Then you detach a white sort of, not a white, a clear rod from a attachment point, and you can make Han Solo look like he's floating. Also, on the other side, this is where you can, well, it's supposed to be used to, I believe, hang a minifigures And yeah, it's basically so that they can, it's basically an instrument of killing a minifigure or a character in Star Wars. But let's actually move back outside for a minute and look down at the tree trunks, because there's quite a lot hiding in the tree trunks. Firstly, if you rotate this slightly, actually, you know what? I'm actually just going to change the camera angle so that I can show you all the features. Now, since I moved the net away, there's this kind of release over here. When you push it, I'm going to just move my hand, a spider web pops up. Also, to the right, there's a door that reveals some Ewok sort of lettering. Also, the two plates that you see here and here can actually be removed by just lifting them up out of their slots, and then they're just kind of plants. And Lego did this to add more detail, obviously, to make it look more like a jungle, but also it's a good use of, you know, connecting the sort of trees a bit more too on the ground. But with this, I'm actually just going to quickly show you. With this button, when you press it, it opens up. But the purpose of this is with the scene with the scout trooper, when you have the speeder speeding in. I'll actually just grab the scout trooper now. Now here's the scout trooper. He's a bit lower than usual, but it's okay. When you have a scout trooper, when you pull this back in, it's supposed to hit the scout trooper. Now, I didn't do it exactly accurately, but you get the point. Now, I'm going to move the scout trooper for a quick second. I'm going to close this, and I'll show you the other tree trunk, because there's a secret lurking in this one too. Now, if you kind of turn it, you have a space to store things, such as Luke's Skywalker's lightsaber. And up here, this is how you could make the Han Solo or really C-3PO in the movie float. And this is where you attach him once we're done. So now, let's move on to the interiors of the, you know, the tree trunks in the Ewok village. Now, let's start with the two that we can see. Let's move on to this one, where if I zoom in, there's a massive saucepan the size of the person. I'm not exactly sure what you call them, but that's where you can cook all sorts of food. Up top, you have a area with netting as well as more food, but the net's designed actually to catch people. See, let's move back to the sort of holding thing we've had the entire time. I'm just going to grab another minifigure. Let's say this Ewok for whatever reason. So you wrap the minifigure in kind of like a present, and then you attach the holes of the... Okay, this is not going super well. Actually, the minifigure's let go, but you attach it to all four sides, kind of like this. It's not the most secure that you've ever seen. It's actually quite insecure, but when you pull the stud that starts from there, or the string, what it does is it pulls up whatever's been caught, ready for either capture or even just dinner. Also, over here we have the same sort of cannonball system we saw earlier. With the same system, you just flick it upwards. In here we just have a simple fire, and we also have two torches on the inside. Also, we get to see the outside of the design as well, with the leaves and with the just more leaves. And every single one has these sort of torches, and I really like the way that this looks. I'll quickly spin it over to this one, where it's technically the only two-level one, because it has stairs. Now, inside we have a mini bed, a nightstand, and a few more torches, of course. Then up top, we have a stickered element of, I think, a butterfly and a spear, and then an arrow. You also have a little balcony as well, which is more visible when you spin it over like this. And then you can truly appreciate, firstly, this one's kind of majesty with all its tree trunks and leaves and stuff like that. But over here, you have exterior stairs, and then you have a sort of balcony area over here. But now, let's move on to my final thoughts. Now, what are my final thoughts on this Ewok Village set? Simply, it's brilliant. Lego, this is a very special set, and I don't actually know if we'll ever see it again, but this has to be one of the best Lego sets that maybe I've ever reviewed. There's so much detail in this set, and I could have gone on for more detail. Like, the minifigure selection is solid. The detail in this building is actually brilliant, considering it was made 10 years ago. And even though it looks pretty modern, there's still quite a lot of space. It's a good play set, it's a good display set. It works as a good build. Like, there's nothing wrong with this set. And because this set has 0 flaws I can think about, including its price point, I have to give this set 5 out of 5 stars. Yes, this set did retail for 400 Australian dollars, but thinking about it, it's actually not too bad value considering the massive minifigure selection we see, plus this excellent build. And yeah, this is one of my favorite sets I've ever reviewed. Now, let me know what your thoughts are down below on this set, and let me know if you have it or would you be willing to buy it yourself for a heightened price. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button. If you want to see more content just like this, then please subscribe. Hope you guys have an excellent day and keep building.